Good morning. I'm Savannah Sellers. Joe is off today. Thank you very much for starting your Tuesday with us. We are going to begin this hour with authorities in Washington state announcing the arrest of a man charged with starting one of the wildfires ravaging the state. Overnight, police took 37-year-old Aaron Farnacci into custody, charging him with first-degree arson in connection with the Old Trails fire. That's one of the most destructive fires burning in the Spokane area. Well, this morning, as crews are still trying to contain the fires that have already burned 8,000 acres and destroyed more than 700 structures. We have NBC News national correspondent Morgan Chesky in Spokane this morning. He has the latest for us. Morgan, good morning.
Yeah, Savannah, as these three separate fires continue to rage on throughout the Spokane area, investigators made a stunning admission overnight saying that a SWAT team took a 37-year-old Spokane man into custody who has since been identified as Aaron Farnacci, saying that witnesses placed him near the scene of where one of those fires began on Saturday, and that investigators actually briefly detained him and spoke to him. Saying that on his possession, he had a butane lighter and waterproof matches that investigators now believe may have been used to start one of these blazes that continues to burn unabated. As of this point, Farnacci is being held on $1 million bond. It's not clear yet if he's been formally charged or retained an attorney, but we do anticipate him in court later today. And in the meantime, fire crews more than have their work cut out for them. As more than 60,000 people remain evacuated from their homes, they are trying to gain some sort of ground on this Spokane fire complex that has already burned more than 8,000 acres and destroyed more than 700 structures in this area. There is some hope they can make progress today because tomorrow there is a brutal heat wave on the way, pushing temperatures past 90 for the foreseeable future with no sign of rain. And that is an incredibly concerning sight for many in this area after what the mayor is calling the worst fire that this region has ever seen in its recorded history. So as it stands right now, investigators are only tying Farnacci to one of these three blazes, but they maintain that this is a very active investigation. Savannah.
All right, Morgan, thank you very much. Well, let's turn now to NBC meteorologist Angie Lassman. She has more on what's in store for that fire. Also, smoke threats in the Northwest. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Yeah, hey, good morning, Savannah. Yeah, we've got a whole lot going on. You saw what Morgan was just kind of laying out, and more than 100 large fires happening right now across the lower 48. Really active kind of wildfire season so far. And notice those wind gusts, 20 to 30 miles per hour. So we're still going to see that fire outlook be at least in the elevated risk across parts of the Four Corners area, Aspen, Salt Lake City, Cedar City included in that right now. And this, of course, leaving us with difficulty when it comes to air quality. This is something that, especially if you live across the Pacific Northwest and parts of the Southwest, you are in that unhealthy to even very unhealthy category. That range is going to likely stay kind of in that spot at least through the day today. As you noticed, a whole lot of fire still ongoing. Some of us dealing with over 300 for your AQI, that air quality index. That puts us again in the unhealthy. Spokane, one of those places, Boise, Twin Falls, all included in that. So still have a lot of concern, especially for folks that have respiratory issues. For the broader area, you're still going to want to maybe stay indoors, be in an air-conditioned location, because that not letting up anytime soon. Meanwhile, we've got heat alerts as well. 18 million people, heat advisories, watches, and warnings in effect across much of the West as we gear up for a whole lot of potential records over the next couple of days. This goes through Friday. Notice Denver, Las Vegas, Eureka, Reno, Medford, Portland all have the potential to break those record highs here over the coming days. As we look to at least the afternoon hours today in Las Vegas, 112, that stays right in that range for Wednesday and Thursday as well. 109 on Tuesday and Wednesday, 103 for Tucson on Tuesday. Otherwise, fairly seasonal across the eastern half of the country. So really looking at kind of nicer, more typical temperatures for this time of year. We're into the 70s in Minneapolis, both Tuesday and Wednesday, upper 80s across the board, Tuesday through Thursday for Columbus. New York City, Tuesday and Wednesday into the low 80s. So that feels pretty good. Today, you'll notice that. But look what happens by the time Thursday rolls around. We ramp up those temperatures into the upper 80s It's the 90s for Nashville across the board. And we will start to see kind of some of these showers and thunderstorms impacting plans for folks across the Midwest again today. Here's where we're at right now. You can see that Doppler radar kind of active across parts of Wisconsin and Minneapolis. We'll see that rain kind of lingering across parts of the East Coast, but this is that next system that we're going to watch kind of drop into the Midwest and bring us some showers and thunderstorms through the day. Today, Savannah, it sticks around in some of those same locations as we get into tomorrow, too. So umbrella handy for folks in that area.
All right. You are busy for us, Angie. We'll see you in a little bit. Thank you. Well, on Capitol Hill, Todd Blanche's nomination as Attorney General appears to be back on track this morning. The former defense attorney for President Donald Trump is one step closer to confirmation after a deal was struck with the holdout GOP senators who'd been blocking his nomination. At issue was that controversial $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund. Let's bring in NBC News political reporter Megan Brand with more on this and some other headlines from Washington for us. Megan, good morning. Okay, so, there's been a lot of back and forth here on Blanche's nomination in the past week. We're going to see a lot unfold today. Bring us up to speed on the latest development and what we'll see.
Savannah, good morning. Well, in just a couple of hours at 9 a.m., the Senate Judiciary Committee is set to meet to vote on advancing Todd Blanche out of committee into the full Senate floor for his final confirmation vote. Now, this all comes after those two holdout senators, those two Republicans, Senator Thom Tillis of North Carolina and Senator John Cornyn of Texas, indicated that they were going to support Todd Blanche after he had said that he was going to officially rescind that so-called anti-weaponization fund. Yesterday, Senator Cornyn was asked by a reporter whether he trusts that Blanche won't try to come up with some other way of reinstituting that fund. Here's what he had to say.
I can't predict the future, so I don't know what somebody might do. I don't know whether somebody might claim this release as immunity from a future tax audit. But what we wanted to do is make sure that there was an authoritative statement about what the scope was intended to be, that it only affected the parties to the underlying lawsuit.
Now, if Blanche is nominated favorably, is advanced favorably out of committee as he's expected to be, then he will face a full vote for the Senate to confirm him to that position. We don't have exact timing yet as to when that could be, but it would likely be sometime this week or potentially over the weekend, but before senators go back to their home states for the August recess, likely, Savannah.
So, Megan, let's talk, though, about how we got here, what it is that changed minds. We had Republican Senators John Cornyn and Thom Tillis. They were the two big holdouts here on his nomination. What have they said about why they changed their minds and how that anti-weaponization fund factored in here?
So this all comes after Todd Blanche over the weekend on Sunday had released a statement saying that the department was officially rescinding that so-called anti-weaponization fund. And he also said that he was clarifying limits on the audit protections for President Trump. And that had been part of President Trump's settlement with the IRS over his leaked tax returns. So after Todd Blanche had released that statement, then we heard from Senators Tillis and Senators Cornyn. They released a statement saying that they are pleased that the Department of Justice has issued a formal order terminating the anti-weaponization fund. And they also expressed their gratitude to Todd Blanche and his staff for working with them, adding, "We look forward to voting to advance his nomination out of the Senate Judiciary Committee soon." And it appears they are poised to do just that, Savannah.
All right, Megan, also, we do want to ask you, this is something we were talking about yesterday, President Trump criticizing U.S. Attorney and longtime ally Jeanine Pirro. This is over that vandalism case. It came out of this attempt of the president's to renovate the National Wall reflecting pool. What did he say? Do we know if this has affected Jeanine Pirro's position at all?
So he again criticized Jeanine Pirro, and it was her office that had brought that case against U.S. Olympic canoeist Davy Hearn after previously accusing him of vandalizing the reflecting pool. But then they had backed off. They dropped the case after they said that the Department of the Interior had put forward documents that said that after Hearn was indicted, that indicated that the reason that the reflecting pool was damaged was because of flawed installation by the contractor, is how they put it, instead of by vandalism. So President Trump has said that he disagreed with Pirro's decision, and he again criticized her pretty strongly yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
I guess she choked. I was disappointed with Jeanine Pirro, really disappointed with Jeanine Pirro. She folded like an umbrella. and people get away with things, and it's a disgrace.
Now, Pirro was seen leaving the White House yesterday, and it's not entirely clear why she was there, Savannah.
All right, Megan Brand covering a lot for us from Washington. Thank you so much. Well, today is primary day in several states across the country, and the outcome of today's primaries could play a pivotal role in which party gets control of Congress. In the lead up to the midterms, recent polls have highlighted a shift among Democratic voters. So get this, many of them no longer trust party leaders. They're gravitating toward more progressive candidates who promise to challenge the system. Well, that shift is playing out in the hotly contested Senate primary in Michigan. It's between Democrats Haley Stevens and Abdul El-Sayed. You hear that election music, you know what time of year it is. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Julie Sirkin, she's been talking with voters for us. Julie, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. It is primary day. Voters are voting in many states around the country, from Washington to Kansas to Virginia and Missouri. I'll start there. There's an interesting race for the House that we're watching. Cori Bush is trying to make a comeback for her old seat, taking on Wesley Bell, who beat her last time. The issue then, AIPAC and Israel, seems to be the issue now. Again, Bush running very few ads this time, but both ads center around that issue. An insurgent campaign trying to use this momentum that progressives have around the country to take on Bell. Let's move to Michigan, where I am now. I spent last evening following Haley Stevens around in Grand Rapids as she's tried to make her final pitch to voters. This is a four-term congresswoman, someone who says she rolls up her sleeves, is a Midwest gal, is ready to work, particularly for that auto industry that is so big in the state of Michigan. She's taken on a centrist, moderate approach to this campaign. Her opponent, Abdul El-Sayed, is a progressive and insurgent backed by the progressives, not necessarily the leaders of the Democratic Party in Michigan. Stevens says she's keeping her focus local. Abdul El-Sayed, though, running away with it in multiple polls. He has the support, the momentum of young voters, a lot of students in this state. Israel, as I mentioned, a big issue in that race as well. And so I asked Stevens how she plans to extend and reach across to those voters to try and get them to support her in November if she pulls it out today. Here's what she said.
We need long-term peace. You know, Netanyahu has failed in that goal. He's attacked me by name. I very much believe in a two-state solution. My Democratic opponent doesn't. And, you know, I understand that people might disagree. But leadership in public service is also taking positions and communicating effectively and transparently. And that's how I've won 4 tough elections, you know. And look, here's the other thing I'll say is Michiganders who talk to me, what I hear from them is, honestly, I've been all over the state, is it's about costs. You know, and we have a democracy, and it's okay to disagree. You know, I am here, you know, to get us long-term peace. I'm here to stand up to Donald Trump and his abuses of power. I have done that. You know, people are talking about my style and approaches, but I win for my state, and I'm fired up to do something for Michigan in this moment.
Stevens' answer, or lack thereof, really shows you the moment that Democrats find themselves in, unsure of how to move forward. She's running a campaign that is against Trump, against ICE, against all of these issues that Democrats seem to put at the top of their list. But I interviewed multiple voters who are supporting El-Sayed. Some of them said they don't even know if they consider themselves Democrats, and they don't know if they would vote for Stevens if she won the primary today, come November. So this is a big moment for Democrats, not only about control of the Senate and the House and governors' mansions as well, moving into November, but for this primary, it will tell us a lot about the future of the Democratic Party.
All right, Julie Sirkin, thank you so much. Well, in the Middle East, there is mixed messaging over the status of talks aimed at ending the 5-month-long war between Iran and the U.S. President Trump says talks got underway yesterday to get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, a big sticking point. But Iran denies discussions with the U.S. are happening, saying it's only speaking with Oman. The denial prompted the president to accuse Iran's leadership of being, quote, duplicitous. Mr. Trump also warned Tehran that time was running out to make a deal, issuing this threat yesterday.
I want to give them every last chance before decapitation. And we're talking at the request of Iran, backed by Saudi Arabia, backed by UAE, and backed by Qatar in particular, but others also. They all wanted to give this a last chance. This is the last chance This is not something that, if it doesn't happen, this is a last chance for them to sign a good document.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us on this now. Raf, good morning. So the president once again threatening these further attacks if a deal isn't reached, using the word decapitation there. Let's just start on, is it clear if talks are actually happening right now?
So, Savannah, it does seem that there are talks going on, but according to the Iranians, they are between Iran and not the United States, but Iran and Oman. That's that small Arab country on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. And the Iranians and the Omanis have been speaking for some time now about coming up with some kind of framework where they jointly control what had previously been a free and open international waterway. The mood music coming out of this is that the Iranians would no longer be charging tolls, as they said they have done in the past, but instead charging some kind of service fee for ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, that is likely to be unacceptable to the United States. It is likely to be unacceptable to other Gulf Arab states, but it sort of seems to be the only show in town right now in terms of negotiations. It is really not clear that there are any substantial talks going on between the U.S. and Iran right now, despite what the president is saying. And we are certainly not seeing high-level summits in Switzerland like we were at the beginning of this process. As you say, President Trump has repeatedly said that he is about to engage in very large-scale strikes and then called those strikes off, citing progress in these negotiations. But that progress so far hasn't yielded any kind of major deal. Savannah?
Raf, the president had even suggested that the Strait of Hormuz could be reopened today. I mean, is that likely? What is the situation when it comes to the Strait right now?
There's just no indication that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be open today. In the last 11 hours or so, we had another update from the British Maritime Agency that monitors the Strait. They say another commercial ship was attacked as it moved through the Strait. It's not clear at this point that it was Iran, but that is certainly the suspicion. And President Trump can say again and again that the Strait of Hormuz is open. He can say that the American military is in the area, that it has the ability to protect ships. But what we are seeing is the Iranians are still able to strike these oil tankers, strike these cargo ships with drones, with speedboats, with mines. And all it takes is for the shipping companies or for the insurance firms behind the shipping companies to decide that it is just too dangerous to try to send a fully laden oil tanker through this critical waterway. And it means that this blockage continues. Savannah?
Raf, we also want to switch gears really quickly before we let you go and ask you about Gaza. It suffered one of its deadliest days since what was supposed to be a ceasefire came into effect. 26 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes over the weekend. What is happening here? What does this mean for this plan of Hamas disarmament and Israeli withdrawal?
Yeah, so President Trump announced with a lot of fanfare that there had been a breakthrough, that Hamas had agreed to disarm. In the days since, we have not seen progress on the ground, and we have not heard from the parties themselves, Israel and Hamas, that they have agreed on any kind of framework here. One of the basic sticking points is whether Israel withdraws at the same time that Hamas disarms, or whether Israel withdraws first or Hamas disarms first. And right now, there is a big disagreement about the sequencing. And until you get that moving, it's unclear that there's going to be much progress here. Savannah.
All right. Raf Sanchez, thank you so much. Well, let's discuss the latest developments out of the Middle East, starting with that war with Iran, with Elise Labott. She's the author of Cosmopolitics on Substack. Elise, good morning. So if we go back to that, we were talking about a moment ago with Raf, this cycle here of these serious threats of the use of military force. As I mentioned, President Trump calling it decapitation right now, but then followed by this de-escalation from President Trump that's happened on multiple occasions, and sort of this allusion to talks potentially taking place. 5 months into this conflict, we keep seeing this repetitive cycle. What does that mean the Trump administration's strategy is? What are they trying to do?
I don't think there's any strategy, really. They're just trying to get the Strait of Hormuz open. I think the threats are really the problem if they're not backed up by anything really serious. I mean, these continued strikes every few days and then stopping. Iran doesn't have to beat the U.S. on the battlefield militarily. It just has to withstand the strikes. And The Iranians feel that this is what they can withstand. The president obviously is loath to escalate the conflict, put boots on the ground, really go after some of the targets that it would take to hold the Strait of Hormuz and keep it open, or go for the denuclearization. And at this point, the fact that the president keeps making threats and pulling back, the threats don't really mean anything. It's kind of like the boy that cried wolf. And so the threats are really counterproductive at this point, because the Iranians know that they're not being backed up by action.
Elise, as we mentioned, Iran is also denying that any direct talks with the U.S. are happening from their perspective. Is that a case of trying to kind of like outlast the U.S. in any way by not engaging in these conversations? Because then it means that the confusion and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz continues, which is sort of this big chip that they have?
I just think at this point they're trying to make the U.S. kind of look foolish and mock the president, because there are talks going on. I mean, as Raf said, the talks are just not going on directly. And what President Trump says is, we're talking to him. There's kind of mediation going on between third parties, whether it's the Omanis, whether it's the Qataris. The Saudis have been involved in talks. The Turks have been involved in talks. So there are talks with other parties going on with Iran. But Iran keeps this strategy that it's not going to release control of the Strait of Hormuz. You know, this Strait of Hormuz has been around, as we've been talking, for decades. The Iranians have had this card to play. Now they know they can play it. This is their new nuclear weapon. And I don't see any deal that doesn't allow the Iranians some type of authority over the Strait of Hormuz. I don't know what that looks like, whether it's a face saving, whether it's some kind of monetary, allocation for them. This is where they're drawing their line in the sand, and they're not giving it up. And now they're talking to Omanis about who's going to get what. The Gulf states, as you saw over the weekend, talking with the president. In theory, there's a framework deal in place that ships would go in one area of the Strait of Hormuz through Iran and come out the Omani way. But there's really nothing clear about whether the Iranians would be compensated for that.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or watch live on our YouTube channel.